Hello, welcome to the CAS Autumn Event 2020, brought to you by Computing at School in collaboration with the National Centre for Computing Education. And this keynote taught by Martin on connecting students to the tech sector. I'm Sarah Zaman, CAS Outreach Manager for the North Eastern Yorkshire, and I'm your host for the session. We're also joined by Carol Murray, who's the moderator, and she'll be monitoring the question window. Shortly, I'll introduce Mark. Just before I do, I've got a couple of things to say. In terms of housekeeping during the session, please use the question window on the right-hand side of your screen to ask questions. The top of the window has an orange rectangle which can be expanded or collapsed. I'll be making a note of questions posed there, and these will be answered if time allows at the end. If time doesn't allow, responses will be posted on the CAS forum and across CAS social media channels. There's two hashtags for this event, hashtag CAS Autumn Event and #CAS Virtual 20. As a reminder, all attendees are in listen-only mode. So let me introduce Mark Martin. So Mark Martin, aka Urban Teacher, is an advanced skills teacher in education and computer science. He's a thought leader in EdTech and a hugely popular speaker, sharing his expertise and insights to the educators around the world. He's a teacher advisor for the major global tech brands and continues to advocate for homegrown talent, digital skills and education equity. In February 2019, he was awarded the London Business Award for paying it forward. A few months later, he was awarded the MBE for services to education, technology and diversity in UK technology. And after all that, Mark, I'll hand over to you, I think. Thanks very much.
Thank you for having me. And I really want to thank CAS, the Computing at School, for allowing me to share some of my insights into Tech City, as we would call it, but that's just the phrase, that's just the term. And I'm going to be showing you like some insights of how I've been able to connect students to the tech sector, but also understanding young people as a holistic individuals. I think sometimes, you know, we want to just put them in a basket of, we just give them a pump up of a career advice, but actually what would that actually mean? What does it mean in their community? What does it mean for educators? So I'm going to share my screen now. So let's see if I can do this with minimal ease. So if I just quickly show, and can you see my screen? My screen should look fine. So when we think about the opportunities, we've also got to think about the landscape. And this was from a McKinsey report that says the adoption of automation along with technologies such as artificial intelligence and Internet of Things is likely to unleash a profound structural shift in the UK workforce, which will be amplified by mega trends such as aging population. As a result, for the demands of occupations such as managers, technology specialists, health professionals could rise by nearly 20% by 2030. And it's really interesting they mentioned the health specialists because this was done before the pandemic. So it was taken into consideration. What if we did go through some changes in the world? These are some of the skill sets and professionals that we actually need. And the thing is that within a lot of our local spaces, a lot of these tech companies are moving in. And the question I want to ask you, and those people that are tuned into this session, what are the barriers around career advice? What are the main barriers that you're finding around career advice? Because my personal experience, it's always been like a flash pan experience where, you know, we get a guest speaker to come in for an assembly, they pump up the kids for 30 to 40 minutes and then leave us to pick up the pieces in terms of Googling the opportunities, where they need to go or who they need to access and so forth. And then I've worked in some other schools where they have very minimal career advice, but all the kids know, or all the young people know what they want to do in life because of their social networks, because of the people that they know in their local community. So there's quite a few things when it comes to career advice. And I like to look at career advice as an ecosystem. It's not that it shouldn't fall down to just the teacher or just the tech professional. It's a whole community, a collective approach that everyone is working to show the opportunities that exist on the young people's doorstep, and also make them more aware that, you know, people are building tech companies in local areas or out just next door to the school or round the corner. So these are kind of things that we need to be kind of showcasing a lot more in what we do. But let's be realistic. In London, where I'm based, we've got a massive youth violence problem. We've got things around aspiration in terms of lack of aspirations from a lot of our young people, because probably over the years they've been let down in different avenues. And then with this COVID and pandemic, how do we raise that aspiration on our young people? How do we tell them that whatever you're doing in school now is going to affect you in the future around careers and job opportunities? And then of late, we've seen the rise of poverty. The pandemic has put a spotlight on the issue of poverty. And then before the pandemic, we was really excited to be talking about this alt pathways around T-skills, around a new option to really help students and also professionals deliver something alongside the academic pathway. And then we had career pathways in the sense that how many career pathways do young people know, or do they know that in the future they might have to hold 5 to 10 jobs before they get to their real career that they really enjoy? And then the threat of automation. So traditionally we'd tell a young person to go into the supermarket, but now you've got self-service checkout. So in this landscape, we've got our personal experience of how we grew up when we had work experience as teachers or adults. And then you've got public knowledge at the moment of all of these buzzwords around machine learning, artificial intelligence, big data, and so forth. And sometimes as teachers, we sit in the micro level. So we're really occupied with what happens in the school and what's happening in terms of the life of the school, in terms of getting kids great exam results, building up to be citizens in our community. And then you've got the meso level where it's more around what is happening in the local community. Is it gentrification happening, or is there opportunity starting to emerge and our young people are having exposure to that or access to that? And then what's the macro level? What's happening at government level? What's happening at the UK level in terms of productivity, around innovation, creativity? Where is the future going? And as a teacher that was really passionate about getting a meso or macro view of tech, because that's what I teach as a computer science teacher, I really wanted to have the 50,000 feet view of my profession. So that could give me a great look across the landscape. So if I'm training young people up to be computer scientists, these are all the opportunities in your area, whether you want to work in a startup, whether you want to work for an SME, whether you want to build your own company. These are the things that you can access in your local space. And then these are the initiatives probably from a macro level where government's pushing, where, you know, there's for now, for a lot of the individuals who are leaving A levels or going into university or leaving university, there's these apprenticeship degrees where you can study and work at the same time in technology. So there's so much different things going on, but the issue is that who knows? And during the pandemic, it's fascinating. Young people are innovating to the issues that matter to them, and we've seen through the pandemic young people setting up food banks, helping the homeless, and doing all kind of amazing stuff. So we've seen this young person in the States, Avi, who created an app to sculpt all of the COVID cases for countries around the world. And I think one company offered him millions to purchase the app. And I think that a lot of our young people are innovating and creating at home. They've got a lot of skill sets that probably they don't bring into school because they don't see the connection. But at home, where they spend the whole weekend looking at YouTube and programming, coding, or on social media, designing stuff, on graphics and all of this kind of stuff, there is this sense of creativity and innovation happening. And then, you know, we've had young people supporting the NHS, printing out 3D PPE equipment on 3D printers. And this shows you the power of our young people. It's not the fact that they're not talented, it's the fact that where do they go to access the opportunities and also where do they go to get that support, whether it's from industry or whether it's the passion that they're really focused on. And then, you know, we've had this whole thing around Black Lives Matter since the death of George Floyd. And we've seen young people starting to advocate, use their voice, creating really innovative graphics and posters to really get their point across. How can we harness that? How can we bring that back into school and give them a platform to really harness some of this skills that they're learning around advocacy, around justice, around equality, around equity, and all of these kind of stuff. And I think that there's this great opportunity here, because when I work in the tech sector, it's funny, a lot of the recruiters that I work with, they don't necessarily want to look at the grades per se. They want to look at the young person's passion. They want to look at the individual's kind of what gets them up and go. And these types of things here is really key in terms of how we build our young people to really stand up and to really be counted for in their local community. But when we look on the high street, as I mentioned earlier, it's becoming automated. So how do we tell young people where to go or where to get a job, or, you know, how they're going to see themselves in the future, where now you've got self-service checkouts, you've got touch screens in McDonald's, probably in the future you have robots actually making the burgers, or and so forth. And then you've got these local spaces where you can now access the internet, you can connect your Wi-Fi, digital devices. So a lot of these traditional spaces are becoming digitalized. Where do our young people fit into that? And it's probably, we might need to have different conversations, in the sense that you might not get a job at a supermarket on the checkout, but actually one day we might want you to help build an application for the self-service checkout, or this is how the self-service checkout works in terms of data, around privacy, all of these kind of stuff, the ethical issues of how these machines are working. So there's quite a few avenues that young people can go down. That's if they know. That's if they're aware that, you know, with these changes presents opportunities for them to engage. And then one of the things working in Brixton in South London in the UK is that a lot of our local spaces are now becoming digital hubs where people with great tech ideas are moving in and forming teams and creating apps and creating games and creating a range of different stuff. And when I ever do this presentation, my young people, they just walk past this building every day. They don't know that actually there's this tech innovation that's happening in their area. So some of the things that I've been trying to do is get our young people one lesson to go and visit these spaces, to understand what's taking place, opening up their mindset to think about, actually, once I do get my qualifications in school, I can actually build my next big thing in my local area, because there's access, there's space to actually do that. So these are some of the things that I try to kind of bake in to my practice as a computer science teacher. And then here's a short case study in terms of, I work in a borough called Lambeth, which is in South London. And when I ask young people what's the biggest tech company in the borough, most of them don't know, but actually it's IBM. IBM is like one of the biggest tech companies in the world. And a lot of my students just don't understand, or not even aware that this company actually exists. And then we've got Jellyfish, which is an animation graphics company that's doing amazing work. And then you've got the South Bank Centre near Waterloo. And these are some big establishments doing amazing stuff. How much do our young people know that within our local areas, what exists? And you might be thinking, how do I check out what's in my local area? How do I start to raise that awareness of some of the stuff that's happening in my area to my students? I think the game's changed now since lockdown, in terms of it's very easy to reach out to one of these organizations via LinkedIn, try and find someone on LinkedIn to connect with, and then set up a webinar or a short lesson where you can get one of these representatives to talk about what's happening in their industry to our young people. A lot of times I speak to rural teachers out in the fields, and they would say that it's difficult to connect with the tech sector, because they're many miles away, or they're just unreachable. But I think with this whole pandemic, it's shown you that long as you've got a good internet access, a webcam, and a good microphone, you can tap into nearly anyone if they're willing to give you the time and space to really air their kind of insights. So what are the top jobs in the UK? That's the lovely thing that I like to start with in terms of at parents' evening, when young people first jump on my course to deliver. And I kind of show them where things are going in terms of artificial intelligence specialist, data protection officer, robot engineer. These are some of the top tech jobs in the UK. But can I put a quick side note that you don't necessarily need to be a techie to be in tech. You can actually be a great writer. You can be a graphic designer. You could be someone who solves problems, or someone who likes to present, public speaking. There's a range of jobs in the tech sector alongside the technical roles that's been listed in this presentation. And there's some more jobs in terms of information technology service, computer software. So we're starting to see that technology is basically the tool that is powering a lot of our economy. And whether we like it or not, that's where the future is going towards. And that's what we need to be encouraging our young people and giving them more insight and exposure to. How will COVID-19 affect the career advice we give to students? I think from my point of view, as I said before, now schools should be now trying to reach to professionals across the net, whether you need to Zoom a meeting in for half an hour to talk to people that do different job roles, or see if you can connect someone in the local community that's willing to speak for a lesson or two around the career advice. Also, I think there's this massive opportunity around how do we get more local businesses working with our students to solve a societal problem. So one of the biggest issues that I had in my area is around knife crime. So we wanted to design a billboard that would be up for a month in our local area of a positive message designed by students using one of these graphic design tools. And before lockdown, I had a few big companies involved in that. I had the council involved in that, but hopefully I can get that going again. But where is it in your community where you can link the professionals and the young people? And the reason why that's key is because young people need to start becoming comfortable around these professionals so they can see that it normalizes their experience. I think sometimes when we don't normalize the experience of professionals, it can be intimidating for our young people. Young people don't want to ask questions because they might be embarrassed, it might be too silly, or whatever it is. And we need to break down these barriers. And the way we break that down is by creating scenarios where we can connect the tech sector or professionals with our schools to create better synergies. And then in the classroom, we need to really think about how we kind of operate in the classroom. So a lot of stuff, when I ever teach a brand new topic or a concept, I might bring up read.com to look at the role or the task that I'm asking students to do, to show them that, hey, you know that you could do this for full time in the industry. And it's about representation too. It's about, do we show enough representation within our slides? So when we are showing topics and courses, do young people see themselves in those slides and in those courses that you're delivering? So that boosts the morale, that gets them really keen and really excited to think about, actually, if they can do it, I can do it too. And I've got this famous word that I love to use: you see it to be it. So young people want to see it to be it. And if you don't believe me, just look at when their favorite music artist is, and how, you know, some of them want to emulate them, or when the fashion comes out, they want to be a part of that fashion. So they want to see it to be it, to really feel comfortable with the process. How well do we understand our subject in the real world? So how well do we understand our subject? So as someone who works in tech and a computer scientist, I'm able to connect a lot of my topics to real world work or real world scenarios. And what I've tried to do more and more now is connect, like whenever I'm doing a project with the students, I connect it to the local community. I connect it to the stuff that's happening in the world, and showing them that, listen, that's what people do in the real world. They try and solve things to make this world a better place, or, you know, to help people to solve stuff, or to work out stuff, or to work in really complex situations. So as much as I'm delivering my course content, I'm connecting it to the real world so it makes sense. And, you know, we don't need to look too far for our students that are doing amazing stuff at home. And as I mentioned in the lockdown, they were doing so much for the community, but some of the skill sets that these students have is pretty amazing. And it's amazing off the back of the fact that they can build a universe at home, or they can build this really complex battle that probably as an adult myself, or someone who might work in that field, might find it very difficult. So they're able to work out very complex stuff. So how are we able to connect some of the complexity or the talented stuff that they're doing at home back into school? And when we read the headlines show us that there's a lack of construction, there's a lack of skills entering the sector, but they're at home building probably 10 battle forts a night, or building these universes that are with great complexity and great engineering. So how do we kind of combat these headlines where, you know, there's this lack of shortage and this massive disconnect between what we want to see in the industry, or what we want young people to be interested about, and also connecting that passion, what they do at home. And yeah, surprisingly, students are coming to lessons with more technical skills than the teacher. And for many moons, I've never tried to shut down young people when they do come with those technical skills. I try and get them to teach me, or teach the pairs on how they've done that. So if a student's coming and says, sir, I've got a massive following online, or sir, you know, I'm generating this amount of interest because I'm sharing my insights into gaming, or designing, or music, or whatever, I'm able then to channel that and then to show them the real life application. And then what do we do at this point? Once we are challenged with all of this kind of career and tech talk conversation, how do we kind of bring that back into school? How do we make it practical? And the three things that I like to gravitate towards is that I like to have these check boxes. So where are the access points for students' passions? What are they passionate about? Where's the access points that I can connect them to? Where are the opportunities within the curriculum, or within my busy schedule in schools? How do I find opportunity to connect the dots amongst young people and the industry? And then the awareness. Is there somewhere on your website or school portal, or do you send a regular newsletter to young people to showcase what's happening within the community and how they can get engaged, or the opportunities that exist? And I think that sometimes, as I said before, the flash pan thing is not working. I think that went out of date a long time ago in terms of how we get our students to really participate and engage with our lessons. And then when we think about connections, it's about how do we give young people unique connections? So before lockdown, I would always try and get our young people to go on a trip, whether it's to a tech company, or get a tech company to come in, or I would try and think about bringing in some new kind of tech to showcase to my young people. And I think that I normally try and give them 3 experiences per year group, and have that as a cycle. So whether it's starting from year 7 to year 11, 3 experiences a year that gives them the confidence, that gives them the oversight of what could potentially happen within school and within the local area. So what is the best way to design a career-driven program? Now, I'll be very honest, some of these career-driven programs in school is not designed for the young person. I think it's supposed to be designed for the young person, but it doesn't hit the spot. I think a lot of young people roll their eyes, or they might not see that sometimes the things that we are trying to present to them is so out of reach that it's just there for display. So I've been into lots of schools where they might say, Mark, we are kind of posting up all of the job opportunities and things in our community, but it's not relatable. Young people don't find it relatable, and we've got to find that desired path for our students. And that might be whether we, once they engage with the community, we give them, we try and help them to build a professional portfolio of the work that they can potentially do, or if they're doing amazing stuff at home on these computer games, on social media, or on graphics, or whatever it is, we can acknowledge that and build up a portfolio so they can see all of the skills and talents that they have and how they can be applied to the industry. By 2030, 2/3 of the UK workforce could be lacking basic digital skills, while more than 10 million people could be underskilled in leadership, communication, decision-making skills. So alongside all of the tech talk, we still got to help our young people to become leaders, help them with their communication, help them to make decision-making skills. And I think that all of these stuff here is that young people want to come to school and bring their identity. They want to be acknowledged. They want to be heard. They want to know that whoever is standing in front of them, they can trust. They've got their best intentions in hand, and that whatever the person in front of them is saying, they're saying it they really believe that those young people can actually achieve it. And I think that this is more and more what we need to be seeing in schools. So some of the things that I've done from my kind of view is that I've taken my students, I've contacted someone at LinkedIn and said, hey, LinkedIn, you guys are like the #1 in the world for professional portfolios and people looking for jobs. Could my students come for a day to build professional portfolio? So LinkedIn agreed to it, and we had an amazing session. And then I've set up some technical interviews. So alongside the exam talk, how do you get a job? What are the things that you need to go through? And these students are a little bit older than my secondary school students. These are more university, or people that have just passed university, because also I lecture at a university too. And again, setting up these technical interviews have been able to really inspire and to really engage people into the workforce. And then, as I mentioned before, it's getting young people to celebrate their local area through graphic design, through understanding that the skills that they're doing in school, they can actually use that in their community. And then by using that in their community, they can put it back into their professional portfolio to showcase their future employer. So this is how we do the 360 in terms of young people with skills, getting them to use them skills in the community, and then showcasing that in a professional portfolio. Now, this was an amazing day at Microsoft HQ in London, where my students got to meet some West End actors, and the West End actors were able to build confidence in students to be able to present, articulate themselves, to really go beyond just sitting behind a PC. And here are two of my students that have been able to engage with some awesome West End actors around co-working with the experts. At my school, we've got 8 soft skills that we like to promote. And when I was looking at these soft skills, I said to myself, there's a similarity between these soft skills and also computer games. And I wanted to push the boundary a little bit to think that, could I set up an esports room at my school? And the whole aim of this esports room, which will be a gaming room, will be focused on these skills that we push throughout the curriculum and throughout the school activities. And at first, sometimes in schools you might get the no from your senior leadership, where we're going to get a budget to get these equipment from, and you might get some pushback, but you've got to keep pushing. I think we've got to keep pushing for our young people, and also we've got to keep pushing in the fact that we've got to go beyond how our young people think about themselves and also the stuff that they do. And we know that esports is a massive industry. Probably when I was growing up, if I told my parents I wanted to be in esports, they probably would laugh and say there's nothing in that. But now it's filling out arenas, and it's taken off to be a really phenomenal sport. And here's the esports room that we set up. So ACER believed in the vision that I had in terms of how do we get our young people to play computer games and for them to acknowledge the skills that they're doing in these computer games. And it worked well. I think we done quite a lot of work in terms of showcasing to our students that it's not just about playing computer games. There's so much more other skills that you could be learning in the process. And then we also brought in the industry. So this is ThoughtWorks. ThoughtWorks is a massive consultancy agency. They do a lot of work within the industry to support schools. And this one was around diversity. How do young people, how do adults, how do you bring your authentic self to the workplace, whether it's LGBT or whether you've got a disability, whether you're female, whether you're BAME, how do you celebrate your own identity? And this workshop was really powerful because obviously living in London, we live in a very diverse community, and young people want to see themselves in these roles one day, or see some representation in these roles. So we was able to showcase that by bringing in ThoughtWorks to show them how this company in particular supports every single staff, irrespective of their background, into the different roles within the organization. And I think that's very important in terms of, for our young people, it must be daunting talking about all these careers. How are they going to fit in? How are they going to be accepted? How are they going to be embraced? And I think that this is a fantastic workshop that we have done with our students. Also brought the games industry to my local area for families, and also for my students to understand how many graphic visual design companies exist in the local area. Again, this was a amazing event where families came out and students came out, and they met over 15 digital companies doing stuff within London. And again, the town hall is traditionally not a space for these types of activities, but we was able to rent it out and to showcase how we can really engage our students to see the opportunities. How do we connect our young people to experts that can help them perfect their craft? So if you've got students that are really talented at a particular area within your subject or curriculum, is there experts that you can reach out and you can connect them to? And I think sometimes that boosts aspirations, that boosts morale, that gets young people really excited into the opportunities that can be presented. And then I was able to take some students to the Bet Show to showcase their insights, to showcase their skills, which was fantastic. Also, I invited NatWest Bank to work with my students, because one of the things is my students like to talk a lot and they're really kind of charismatic individuals. And I was like, okay, so how would you do that on a shop floor? You might need to polish that up a little bit and support the local community with their mobile phone banking app. So we hired, I think, 5 students to go and work in the local banks within South London to build their confidence, teaching the community about how to effectively use mobile banking. This was fantastic. It was an amazing experience. And I think that that's how you leverage organizations within your community. If you know that students are lacking public speaking or how to, hold themselves in conversations, is there spaces within our community that we can find opportunities for them to engage in? And I've got a few tools here that I use to kind of inspire and to really support teachers. So it's just a matter of, because a lot of people say, Mark, how do you find this? How do you get to understand what's happening in your area? And the MailChimp thing that I was talking about in terms of newsletters, sending out nice newsletters to your students, it could be to parents, it could be to your community, Adobe Spark for graphics design, collaboration platforms, so such as most schools have got collaboration platforms from Microsoft, Google, Apple, ranking emails. So again, that can definitely reduce, once you send your emails to the different industry, rank them to see which will be beneficial, and so forth. So there's just a few little ideas how I kind of use different tools. Also I used to use Twitter lists and bookmarks. So I Twitter list all of the tech companies in my local area, and I will look at their feeds. If they've got anything interesting going on, I'm always up to loop with that, because you can have your own tailored feed for the careers and jobs and so forth. You can also type in Google keyword alert. So you can type in your local area, you can type in a particular thing in tech, and then if there's an event or something's happening with your local area, you get a ping straight to your phone to showcase the opportunities. So the aim of this presentation that I really wanted to come across is that there's a positive message out of this in terms of how we are preparing our students in our community. How do we help students to build these strong portfolios by doing stuff in school and outside of school? Students build key industry skills. So we know that students have got a lot of key industry skills, but how do we make them realize that? How do we kind of bring it back into their kind of futures? And then mental health and belonging. The two big things that I found with supporting young people and giving them career advice is about their mental health. And sometimes that mental health could be like, how do we give them a balance of confidence, encouragement, giving them a sense of belonging? A lot of young people don't feel they belong anywhere. And, depending on what school you're working in, some students might be, as I said, super confident because they've got a family network or they've got a social network that they can call up whoever and to support them with their kind of career advice and so forth. And then real life projects and enhancing personal statements. So these are some of the things, as I said, that kind of resonate with me from the outcomes and how I've been really successful in connecting my students to the opportunities on their doorstep. And I'll be happy if there's any questions. So I hand it back over to the moderator to see if there's any questions before we wrap up this session.
Mark, that was absolutely immense. Like, you've answered most people's questions, I think, in there, but just something that's come up in the questions is, obviously in the current climate of COVID, have you got any advice of, because school trips are pretty much stopped, have you got advice of how to get the tech businesses involved in the climate that we're in currently?
Yeah, so as I was saying before, if you can set up a timetable on Zoom, so I think most companies are pretty confident. If the school purchased a Zoom account and said, listen, once or twice a month, we're going to invite a keynote speaker to speak on webcam to our young people, or that can even be recorded. You can even record the session, but make sure that the speaker's talking towards the school and talking towards the students. That'd be fantastic. You can use LinkedIn, or there's, again, we're on CAS message boards. You could definitely put a request in there to say that, hey, I want to connect to some professionals. Do anyone know anyone in our network that I can be connected to? So I think it's more around us taking that next step, because I understand that schools are pretty congested at the moment with different issues. But if you really want to get that career advice in, I think it's pretty accessible more than ever now.
Brilliant, thank you. Just let me double check, but I think that's all the questions. We really appreciated the way that you presented that when you had the questions in your presentation as well.
Yeah, I was thinking ahead of myself.
We've obviously done this before. Thank you. I'll hand you to Sarah.
Oh, thanks very much. Thanks, Mark. That was really, really interesting. I think the bit that I picked up on was the bit about you don't have to be a techie to be in the tech sector. And I think that's a really good message to get out to children in secondary school, isn't it, really? When they're thinking about taking GCSE computer science, for example, that actually even just having that qualification doesn't mean to say that you're just going to be sitting at a desk, you know, programming in Python or whatever. So yeah, really, really good. So yeah, thank you. Just for everybody else, at the end of this webinar, a short survey is going to appear on the screen. We'd be grateful if you could take a minute to complete the survey. Recording of this webinar will be available on CAS after the session. We hope to see you at other sessions in the autumn event. Please do continue to spread the word about computing at school. Don't forget, we have a Twitter account, we've got Instagram, we've got our Facebook groups. It's all happening in there. And thanks for joining. Have a lovely rest of your evening. And thanks again, Mark. That was brilliant. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for having me. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you.